Hey everyone, I'm Katrina. I'm a priestess of radical reclamation, and I am your intuition mentor. Welcome to the Truer podcast. Today we are talking about how to use intuition to improve our health. And specifically, I'm going to share with you my story of how I used my intuition and my connection to my body to improve my chronic health disease, which some people say is incurable. But I'm going to get into that in a moment. So, what we're really getting into in this episode is the deeper meaning behind your illness or the deeper meaning behind any health complications or issues that you may be experiencing. So, what I'm going to provide you with is a shift in perspective and some tools that you might feel called to use in your own health journey. I also want to mention before we get into the content that I'm really excited to share that inside the Truer School of Holistic Intuition, we're in early enrollment right now. Within that community, I'm going to start doing a card reading after each podcast episode. So it's like bonus content. So after I do a podcast episode, I'm going to do a card reading that's based on what the podcast episode is about. So today the episode is about using intuition for your health. So I'm going to be asking to receive messages for the community within the Truer School about what their body really wants them to know. What messages does their body have for them at this time for their health and wellness? And if you want to be included in that, make sure you're joining the early enrollment for a Truer School of Holistic Intuition. It's an amazing place that I've created. It's a modern mystery school where we connect inwards and receive our own intuitive messages and learn how to live guided by our own intuition, which is really being guided by our soul. Okay, with that said, I'm going to get into the messages. I have my notes here. Of course, before I record, I always sit in meditation and I receive the guidance of what wants to come through. And I was shown that before I tell you all the steps I took to reverse my chronic disease, I don't even like saying my chronic disease. I want to say the chronic disease that has been in my body. I want to share with you where I was at, kind of like the energies or the ingredients that came together to create the disease. It's going to help you understand what you're dealing with too. So, my disease started showing itself. There I go again. I shouldn't say my disease. The dis-ease. By the way, I'm going to use the word dis-ease a lot because it's a lack of ease. I learned that from Louise Hay, and she has a lot of amazing books and content about the body and healing yourself. So I definitely recommend her work. So let's talk about where I was at when this began, which was back in like 2021. I think has it been that many years? I don't remember. Where I was at that time was I was going through a major life transition. A few years before that, I had moved from my career in teaching in international schools. I was overseas. I had moved to Canada, and I had gotten into this habit of trying to be the good girl and the good wife and the good person in the world. And I always felt guilty if I was taking care of myself, if it like took away from others. This is like a warped view that I can see now, but at the time I was believing this as my truth. So here's an example. I struggled with insomnia a lot, and so I often had trouble sleeping, or it would take me hours to fall asleep. And, this is a sign of like hormonal imbalances and high cortisol, but at the time I wasn't so attuned to that. I was just frustrated with that. And I would try and wake up early because my husband had an hour commute to his work and he had to wake up at 5:30 or something like that in the morning. I would try to wake up around, I don't know, 6 or 6:30 and try and help him get ready by preparing all of his food. I think I was preparing his smoothies in the morning. I was preparing his lunch, fresh salads every day. And I was really doing this to be a good wife. And I loved him and I wanted to help take care of him because he had it hard in my mind. He had it hard. He had to travel so far to get to work. He had to wake up early. And I was trying to do good for him. After he would leave for the day, I wanted to just crash out because I was so tired because I wasn't sleeping full nights of sleep often. And I felt so tired. I used to just lay on the couch and like I wanted to go back to bed, but I didn't. And I would just honestly have no energy for anything. But I was trying to be that good wife and that good girl, right? If I put that into perspective, I was living out and I was actually embodying the programming that almost all of us have, especially women, but we all have different programming, that we're supposed to be a certain way. You're supposed to, as a woman, sacrifice yourself for the care of others. You're supposed to be the martyr. You're supposed to overgive and please others and take care of them. And if you take care of yourself at the expense of others, it's selfish, right? This is the twisted belief system that our whole society is built upon, or the whole idea of modern womanhood is built upon, that we have to be in charge of everything and everyone and overgive. That was just a little snapshot of where I was at the time. But then, COVID happened and everyone was in lockdown and I really started to have a full-on spiritual awakening and it was very strong and powerful and I couldn't switch it off. And I started to become more aware of chakras and energy and the unseen realms. I started to learn about how I can use my intuition. So that was the programming I was living out in my life. I was unconsciously embodying the idea, it's this toxic idea that has been conditioned into us since before we were even born, that I felt like I had to serve, I had to support others at my own expense. And I was doing that in a way that was causing the cycle of stress and cortisol being imbalanced. And I was doing this in a way that was very detrimental to my own well-being. Meanwhile, I was trying to hustle as a new full-time artist and I was trying to get everything set up and going and I was so obsessed with work. I just wanted to get that established. So I was working really hard and I was doing things like not having any boundaries around when I was working. I was working on the weekends, working in the evenings, and I felt like I had to achieve in order to be worthy of, I don't know, love or something. I felt like I had to prove to myself and to my husband, to the world, that I was worthy if I was like making money or having success in my work. And that was something that I know a lot of us have. I know a lot of us have these toxic beliefs that we might not even be aware of, or limiting beliefs we might not even know about, that are running the show, that are causing us to live out these patterns that are detrimental to our well-being. So, of course, I learned the hard way. But let me just say, at the same time, COVID was happening after a while, and then I had some time to pause like we all did during COVID. And I got to pause from that hustling because thankfully in Canada where I live, the government was kind of paying you some of your income so you didn't have to be destitute. And so I was actually getting paid to just be. And that really changed things for me. I started having this huge spiritual awakening. I started having all of this new awareness and desire to learn about energy, about chakras, about the unseen realms, about intuition and how I can like meditate and like be connected and receive messages and receive support and just be in connection to my soul. It was all just like exploding within my awareness. Like, wow, this is all amazing. Maybe some of you can relate. Maybe some of you cannot. But I'm saying that because by the time my disease, I keep saying it, by the time the disease presented itself, it was at a point where I actually knew about energy. The dis-ease didn't come into my life, into my body, it didn't present itself until I was ready for it. This is a strange idea. It was part of my soul plan, I believe, at this time. At the time, I was so alarmed and confused, I didn't know what to think because there was so many like emergency health situations that I had to go to the ER. I had to go to the ER 4 times before we got a handle on this. But the interesting thing is, it came when I was ready to see the deeper meaning behind this. And I want to ask you, if you're struggling with anything in your health, what could be the deeper meaning behind it? What is the deeper meaning behind the health challenges or the issues you're having in your wellness or your well-being? There's information in the symptoms you're having, right? For me, I'll just share with you, I've shared it before, I'll share it again. I was eventually diagnosed with endometriosis, a very particular kind that is called endometrioma. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but it created a giant cyst on my left ovary. The cyst eventually became 11.9 centimeters in mass. I don't know how big a regular ovary is, but 11.9 centimeters is, oh, you know what? I have a ruler on my desk for some reason. 11.9 centimeters is this big. There's 11 and there's 12. It's this big. I'm sorry, but that's insane. So of course it was pressing into different things and it was causing a lot of pain, and there was a lot of inflammation in just the general reproductive system, and it was absolutely horrible. Extreme pain. I couldn't even like walk regularly because the motion of walking hurt. I couldn't go grocery shopping because of the walking. Well, I could, but I had to be in pain the whole time. And I was basically bedridden, but mostly just on the couch. It was like that for quite a while because the doctors don't they're not trained to see the root cause or the emotional root of the dis-ease. They don't think of it as dis-ease, a lack of ease, a lack of harmony. They're trained to look at it as an individual symptom or element within the body. It's crazy how doctors don't see the body as a whole. They see it, oh, this is a system, the reproductive system, and this is what's happening in that one system. And I can go on and on about that, but I won't. So I'll come back to this idea of your symptoms are information that you need, that there's a deeper message behind them. It's like your body is screaming at you. In fact, I did a reading for someone a long time ago, and she kept having accidents happen. It wasn't even like a disease. She kept breaking her leg or pulling this thing, or like she kept having so many big, painful accidents happening to her body, or just like a big problems happening to her body over and over again that were not chronic, that were just like, it's seemingly random. And when I looked into it for her, it was about her body was sending her red flags. Slow down, pay attention to your intuition, connect with me. Like the body wanted her to like be more in a restful, connected state. So if we look at the idea of the symptoms or the pain or the flare up is information, even if it's not pain, if it's like a cold or a flu that like continues and continues and continues and like, there's all these different ways your health can be challenged. If we're looking at the idea of that is information, what is it telling you? We can look at the chakra system and see what is associated with it. For example, my dis-ease, there I go again. I need to train myself. The dis-ease in my body is in the reproductive system, and I'm a female. So it's the female reproductive system, and that's where my sacral chakra is. And that is very much ruled by divine feminine energy, our connection to our divine feminine or our healed feminine. It's very much related to creation and creativity. I mean, in your womb, you can create life, right? So that there's a lot of creation energy, and the ovaries are very much associated with creation and creativity because that's where your eggs come from. It's very much associated with emotions and play and flow and all of these things. I'm going to tell you more about that after this, but I want to talk more about that still. You can also look at the organs, like if it's your kidney or your liver, if it's like a issue on one side of the body. They say it is, since ancient times, it's been known that the left side of the body is ruled by the feminine energy and the right side of the body is ruled by the masculine energy. So for me, the ovarian cyst was on the left side, and that's actually very, very, very common for women with ovarian cysts. That's almost always on the left. Doctors don't know why, but I know why, because the left is the feminine side. That's the side that's wounded, that needs our nurturing and care. Similar with breast cancer. It's associated with the heart chakra. And breasts are about nourishment and nurturing the young babies. And so think about if there's any issues with breast cancer in your family, or what is that telling you? It's information. Do I have a lack of nourishment in my life? Spiritually, in my heart, is my heart lacking the nourishment it needs? Is my ability to love myself lacking? And I'm not pointing fingers like you're the reason you're having an issue. I strongly believe that if you have a dis-ease, it's probably part of your soul curriculum and your soul plan. Your soul probably planned for that. Or in my case, I think there was like a flip that switched when it was time to turn on the dis-ease. But perhaps if I had lived my life differently beforehand, it wouldn't need to happen. Maybe that soul curriculum would have been learned in a different way, and I wouldn't have needed such a strong lesson in my life. They say in genetics, you can have a gene switch on or off based on your lifestyle or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but you can have certain conditions like in your genetics, but they might not happen to you. For example, like diabetes or something. So what part of the body is your dis-ease in, or the illness or the injuries continuing to happen in? And what is that telling you about yourself? What information is that showing you? That's really important information. Okay. I don't know why, but I'm being shown the idea of a crime scene, and like the forensic scientists come in and they have to figure out what happened by the clues. And so the forensic teams have all of their strategies of how they gather the evidence and analyze it. And I don't know why it's being shown to me as a crime scene, but it's like in your body, there's lots of evidence being shown to you. And we're not trained to look at it in those ways. We're not trained to say, oh, I always have migraines. I wonder what that's showing me about myself. Migraines are in the brain. That's probably a third chakra problem, imbalance or blockage or whatever you want to call it, wounding. There's probably something related to my idea of my ability to envision my life, or my beliefs, or what I believe about myself, or there's just so many things it could be. Do you see what I mean? If you have a thyroid condition, I think your thyroids are right around your neck area. Sorry, if you're listening on Spotify, not watching the video, I'm touching my neck. The throat chakra, right? Something about expression, authentic truth. Is it being limited? Is it being suppressed? If you go to your gut, a lot of people have digestive issues or gut issues. They say it's your microbiome. I'm sure that's true. But what is the cause of that? Why is the microbiome upset? Why is it happening? Probably related to your solar plexus chakra. That's your masculine energy. That's your identity, your sense of self, your sense of empowerment or disempowerment, your sense of confidence or lack of confidence, worthiness. Do you see how these are like emotional layers within us that are contributing to whatever we're going through in our health? The root chakra. There's somebody in my family who's been going through prostate cancer, and that's very common for men of a certain age. And so, what does the root chakra relate to? I'm not an expert in all of these things, but I had to do my own investigating, right? So, let's just call this an investigation. Since I was shown that vision of the crime scene in my mind's eye as I was speaking about this, you have to investigate for yourself because the doctors are not going to do that. Unfortunately, they'll scan things or they'll do the tests, but they're not going to look at these levels or layers within you. It's up to you to do that. So now I'm going to tell you the 5 steps I took. I don't know if they're in particular order, but let's just say the 5 things I did to help reverse the chronic disease that was really causing me to suffer in my life. And I'm telling you, this is about my perspective. And I want you to reflect on this, like, how does this apply to me? Or how could this apply to my life or with whatever I'm dealing with in my health? Okay? So the first thing I did was I began to see it, the dis-ease, I began to see it as an invitation to understand myself more. It was an opportunity or an invitation. And so I got curious. Of course, this was after I initially had the fear and the panic of, oh my God, what's happening? I feel like I'm dying and I had to go to the ER. And, there's lots of fear and stuff. That's normal because it's alarming. But once I sat with it, I started to see it as an invitation. And I got curious and I started asking myself, what is my relationship with my feminine energy? Because this is happening in my feminine energy center on the left side, which is the feminine side. And it's really big. Like, it's not small. It's not just a small little problem that comes and goes every so often. It was huge, hugely problematic in my life. And then I started to realize how my tendency to over give or give of myself or feel guilty if I rest, feel guilty to give my body what it needs in terms of rest. That was a big aha moment for me. I started feeling the call inside of me to practice feminine embodiment. And I have to say, I hated it. I hated embodiment practices because I had so much resistance. There was a huge resistance. So that was more information that I was like, okay, I'm really resistant to this. Why? What's the big deal? And I was really resistant to it. So it really helped me understand where the blockage was or where the wounding has been that is causing the dis-ease. Think of these as the emotional roots of the problem, inner rejection of my feminine embodiment. No wonder my feminine energy center created dis-ease in my feminine organs, right? I also saw it as an invitation in terms of meditating and connecting to that part of myself more. And because I had developed my intuition to a certain point at that time, I could go to the Akashic records and ask questions and receive answers. I could speak to the organs. I was meditating and connecting to my womb and asking it questions like, what is happening with you? And I remember receiving a message before I knew anything about Chinese medicine. I received a message from my womb that there was a blood imbalance. It had to do with blood. And it was a problem with the blood and that the blood was confused. And then I had a reading with somebody who was my mentor at the time, Camila Magdalena, and she's amazing. She didn't know I had meditated on this and received that info. She told me when she did her reading for me that my body was confused because I was of the age of you better get pregnant if you want to have kids. And the body was like, well, you're not getting pregnant and you're supposed to be. So the blood was like trying to get ready for creating a baby, but there was no baby because I decided I didn't want to have a baby. I decided I didn't want to be a mother. That's a whole nother story. I'll talk about it at some point, maybe. But it's like the body was confused. So we both kind of got the same type of message at the same time in different ways. I realized once I connected with myself, and this was through investigating, I realized there was a lot of anger about the feminine, how the world, how patriarchy has treated women, how women have been so suppressed. I don't even have to go into it. You know what I mean, right? There's a wounding there, and it felt like I was living it in my body. Like I really took on a lot of the pain that was mine, but also like collectively, they call it the collective unconscious. I felt like I was really holding that within me. And of course, I realized maybe this is just from retrospect, like I can look back and realize this, but I realize now that I had a lot of fear of my femininity, my feminine power. There's a power within us that is so great that it scared me, and I rejected it early on in my life, and that was the manifestation of it, was the dis-ease, right? So I'm going to ask you if you have any issues with your health, either now or you feel like it comes and goes. What is this inviting you to get curious about? Look up what part of the body it's in, what chakra it is, or even like, for example, I have a bulging disc on my L5 disc, which is like at the very, very bottom of the spine. You can look up what each disc is associated with. There's all of these cool energetic connections that nobody teaches you that you have to investigate. And so you can ask yourself, what is this inviting me to understand or get curious about this? The second thing I did to help reverse the chronic disease is I started seeking support outside of the mainstream medical community. I mean, I was going to doctors, I had to get referred to specialists. By the way, where I lived, there was a 2-year wait. It was ridiculous. I eventually got to a surgeon who was fantastic, actually. I didn't end up having surgery, and I'll talk about that also. But he was consulting with me about what to do and things like that. But like I said, the doctors never once asked me about my emotional state, about my stress levels, about how my connection to myself or like my feminine energy. Of course, they didn't ask that. But to me now, it's so obvious. It is so obvious. Like, oh, you're having a problem in your reproductive system. That's related to your feminine. So I started seeking out support from others. So I started getting acupuncture. I started seeing a Chinese medicine doctor. And he was amazing. He was from China, and he was like the president or vice president of the Canadian Chinese Medicine Association or something. So he really knew his stuff. And he was doing acupuncture. And at the time I was seeing him, his English wasn't so strong. So I couldn't like ask him all the questions I wanted to ask. How is that working? Like, how does that work? With the acupuncture and the meridians. So I kind of had to look it up myself. But I could feel, he put the needles in, he let it sit for a while, and I could feel inside like the chi was like moving. Acupuncture is to get the chi flowing. And I could feel it, and I had never felt that before. So I knew like this is really doing something. And when I was seeing him, he told me that I was suffering from something called liver stagnation or liver depression. It's a pretty common issue with women, no surprise, because it's related to feminine wounding. So I started learning about chi and like the stagnation in terms of like, I want it to flow, I don't want it to stagnate. And so I started doing things like qigong, which is like a movement practice there's just people on YouTube who offer that. So I started doing that every morning, and I started doing movement that helped my body get the chi flowing. Eventually, I started looking for a naturopath doctor who could help me understand how to work with my body as a whole system in terms of like supporting my health. And the crazy thing is, there was a synchronicity story there. I had met this naturopath doctor a few years before when I was teaching a workshop about energy, actually. And I just met her in passing, but I remembered her name because I was like, I want to go see her possibly. But it never felt like the right time. And I was seeing a different naturopath doctor who was very nice, but didn't help a lot. And after a while, a couple of years of trying to figure all this out, I started feeling the inner calling of like, you got to go see that other doctor, that other naturopath doctor. Her name's Taryn. Hi, Taryn. I don't know if she watches this, probably not. But I had to go see her. All of a sudden, I had this like intuitive sense, like, go see her, go see her. It was like the right time. So I finally booked the appointment. Turns out she offers this therapy I had never even heard of called Bowen therapy, Bowen. And it's something I had never heard of. And it has to do with the meridians of the body and like little fascia movements to like make things flow. I really couldn't explain it very well, but she started doing that therapy on me and it made a huge difference. Huge. There was so much releasing of like the stagnation and things that needed to go, right? So that was really important. I also started an anti-inflammatory diet because the disease is inflammation. So I was like, gotta cut out some things. I wasn't happy about cutting out dairy and gluten, but I mostly live my life with those dietary restrictions now. Not 100%, but mostly. So those are some ways I was supporting myself by getting support from others or just supporting myself with holistic actions I could have taken. The doctors never once told me, maybe you should think about your diet. Maybe you should think about inflammation and reducing inflammation. Not once. It's shocking. It is shocking. It makes me so insane that so many people are suffering with their health and the doctors don't even bring that up. If I hadn't gone on my own investigative journey of this, I'd still be suffering. Anyway, I could go on and on about all of this. Now, the final thing I want to say about this step is I stopped seeing the doctors, the mainstream medical doctors, as the ones with the answers. I stopped seeing them as I go to their office and then they tell me information and I go, oh, okay, and then I just do whatever they say. I was starting to use my discernment with my doctor visits. Now, I'm not somebody who's going to say don't take any pills or anything because I did. I had to start taking a prescription that was going to help me get out of that like emergency level condition that I was in. I was in that condition for a long time and I just needed something to help me get out of it. And so I am on a prescription drug for the chronic disease and it's okay. But I did a lot of these other things because I felt guided to. I followed my inner guidance. So that's really important. The third thing I did to help reverse the chronic condition in my body is I started to love that part of myself instead of feeling frustrated. When you're struggling with your health or with your well-being, it can be really frustrating, right? It is so frustrating. But if you're kind of stuck in that, it almost feels like you're a victim to your own body, like your body's doing something and you don't like it. But when I got out of that and I started pouring love into my body, especially into my womb, where my condition is, when I started pouring love into that and just nurturing it with lovely, loving intentions, things started to change. I felt like I was taking responsibility for my own body rather than like I was the victim. And what I mean by pouring love into that is I would visualize, I would sit in visualization and pour, like in my mind's eye, like pour beautiful light into the womb and love that part of me. I would connect with my inner child. Oh my gosh, I've done so much inner child healing. I actually had two inner child versions of me that I have connected with me in this work. One of them is like, no, I've had three. One of them's 13, one of them's like 6, and one of them's like a toddler. So I started connecting with those parts of me that really needed that love and pouring love into them. This is a really simple thing you can do. If you have any sort of chronic pain or any issues with your body in any way, instead of being mad at it and frustrated by it, really it's like medicine to pour love into it because it's needing your attention, it's needing your care. So how can you pour love into that? You can close your eyes, imagine that part of you, whether it's a body part or an idea like my immune system, and you can pour love into it. Pour love, loving energy. And when I close my eyes and think about loving energy, I see this like sparkling pink glowing light that's like liquid light, and I would like pour it in. So I think that really helps. The fourth thing I did to reverse the health situation is I started surrendering. I was like, okay, I can't control this. I was doing all the things, but I was like, early on, I was a little naive and I thought, oh, I can heal myself. I can heal it and it'll be fine. That's not what happened. Of course, I helped myself through all these things, but I wasn't like waving a magic wand or flipping a switch and it was over with. So I started surrendering the experience because I was getting the message every time I meditated and asked questions about this and was receiving guidance about this. I was receiving the message that it's happening for a reason. And I was actually shown that you're experiencing this now so that you can help people with these problems in the future. And I was like, wow, okay. So I started surrendering the experience because I didn't know what else to do. It actually felt like I was going through an initiation. This health problem that has been chronic for years now, it feels like an initiation. So your health problems or your health conditions or whatever, sometimes the body is an initiatory portal. It takes you from maybe a less mature side of yourself or a less developed self, less awakened self, into the more awakened, into the more matured, into the more healed version of you through the journey of going from that version of you to this version of you. Does that make sense? So in order to surrender the experience, I had to just open myself to say, okay, I'm open to receive whatever transformation is meant to occur for me. I'm open to receive whatever lessons I'm meant to receive from this. Please guide me. Please show me the way. And I was just calling in the highest outcomes and then listening to my intuition. So, like I said, I felt guided to go see that naturopath doctor. All of a sudden, after I had met her like 2 years prior, I felt guided to just start looking at chakras and start looking at acupuncture. And I never had any interest in that before. But all of a sudden, like, ding, like this interest was like in my mind, like, you need to look into that. You need to look into that. So if you're struggling in these ways, you can receive guidance and help. Just be open to receive. You can set the intention, like, I'm open to receive whatever wisdom I'm meant to receive from this experience. I'm open to be shown what are the next steps. What are the steps for me? And then don't expect it's going to come in some like flash of lightning, like, boom, now you know. It comes through your inner voice, like the inner sensing, the inner guidance. It comes from within you. You are the wisdom holder. You just aren't consciously aware of it yet. So be open to receive the guidance that is right for you. Okay? Okay, the fifth thing I did to reverse the chronic health condition was I started being more kind to my body. And this is in terms of like how I was behaving, my behaviors, my actions. My actions started shifting. And I started to be interested in all these other healing modalities, I guess. I don't know what to call them, but I started doing red light therapy. And this was years ago before. I feel like it's really popular now, but back then it was just beginning to become popular. I started to be interested in infrared therapy. So I got this infrared sauna device that I can use at home. It's a sauna blanket. And I really recommend it actually. It's from a company called Heat Healer. It's expensive, but it's really worth it because it helps your body receive the healing of the infrared therapy, and then you're detoxing from like sweating it out. So that's a big release of energy for the body that you need. I started allowing more rest instead of waking up early and trying to prepare all the food for my husband. Like, he's an adult, he can handle it. He was like, yeah, I can do it myself. I was just like imposing my helping onto him. And so I stopped doing that. He's a big boy, he's in charge of that part of his life. And I started to feel like I needed to create boundaries around my work. I work for myself, so I could be working anytime, but that's not good for my body. My body needs more rest, more yin energy. There's the yin imbalance. We talk about yin and yang. Yang is the action, the doing, the outward focused energy. Yin is the inward, slow, receiving energy. So I wasn't allowing that before. I was always like going, going, going. So I started to change the way I behaved in terms of allowing myself to be more intentional with rest. And it took me a long time to stop feeling guilty. I still catch myself sometimes like telling my husband, oh, I'm going to sleep in tomorrow because, blah, blah, blah. And I'll like list off the reasons like, oh, I deserve it because this. And I'm like, wait, why am I listing this off? I'm going to sleep because my body tells me you need more sleep. Why do I need to explain it? And he's not asking me. I'm still working through that, like letting go of the guilt or the shame of giving myself the rest I need. And I think a lot of us probably feel that way. Like I said, I was starting to be more mindful of the chi. So I started to do qigong movement. I got myself one of those little trampolines, like exercise trampolines. They're called rebounders because I read that they're really good for lymphatic flow. And lymph flow is really important for inflammation. And I think it's sort of like a way that we can get the chi flowing. So I started doing that. We're kind of noisy, like bouncing on my little trampoline in my living room. And I should say that I've changed the way I approach fitness because in the past I would think, oh, I better run to get in shape, or oh, I better do these high intensity workouts to get in shape. But now I understand more about the condition I'm dealing with and also about women and hormones. And I understand that high intensity exercise is actually bad for hormones in women. And I can't say that universally. I'm just talking about what I've learned about me. It spikes cortisol. So it's not good for people who are already struggling with hormonal imbalances. I started doing workouts that are good for insulin resistance because part of what I experience is PCOS. It's a polycystic ovary syndrome, and there's a high risk of insulin resistance, which can lead to like pre-diabetes and things like that. So I started doing exercises that are on the treadmill, and it's just walking at an incline at a fast pace. And it might look stupid if you just see someone walking on a treadmill like, oh, it doesn't seem like they're working out very hard. But actually, my body is sweating because it's like I'm walking at a steep incline for 30 minutes straight fast, but I'm not running. So my heart rate isn't getting elevated, but somehow I've read the information online that this is really good for insulin resistance and helping your body get more balance in that area. So overall, I'm just trying to share with you that I found ways to move my body that feel good, that I know are good for my body, and not just, oh, I should be doing this because that's what people say. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, how can you be more kind to your body? Are you feeling guilty if you rest? Are you feeling like you need to justify your worthiness of balance in your life or your sense of well-being and harmony? Like, oh, well, I don't deserve it because I haven't done this and this and this. Oh, well, my list of things to do is so long, so I better do those first. No, it's not good for you if you're not getting the balance you need. So be aware of that. Do things that make your body feel good. How can you move your body in a way that flows the energy? Okay, those were all my notes. Is there any other message that wants to come through about this? Oh, I didn't even share with you how I reversed it. I told you all the steps, but let me share with you that I told you at the beginning that the ovarian cyst was 11.9 centimeters, and they learned this from so many different scans and tests and things. Yes, I did go on the medication, so that helped, but it couldn't have helped this much. But after I started doing all of these things regularly over time, at my last scan, I think it was under 7. I think the ovarian cyst was like 6 point something, or maybe it was right around 7. So if we're talking about almost 12 down to around 7, that's almost a reduction by half the size of the cyst. So this is a measurable way I can show you that I have reduced and reversed the disease. But on top of that, just how I live my life now, I feel like I can live my life without pain almost every day. Whereas before, I was on the couch practically bedridden. So if you think of like bedridden to now, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum of my wellness. My body is experiencing less inflammation, less pain, less dis-ease. Of course, it's still a condition that I have. So it's not reversed 100% in terms of it's not cured, but I have reversed it and I'm living my life in a way that feels so much better. So much better. So I'm offering you all of this information with the hopes that you can find some value in this. How can you consider what I've shared and how can that apply to you? How can you start pouring love into your body where you need it? What is the emotional root cause of the issue that you're struggling with? Start thinking about this like those forensic investigators. This is an investigation and an initiation. Health and body problems really are an initiation into an opportunity to become more aligned, to become more balanced and a better version of you. And I'm not wanting to put any shame on anybody if they're struggling, because I still struggle every now and then. It's unavoidable. It's just part of being a human, is our bodies have these things we have to deal with sometimes. Okay. If you're interested in being more connected to yourself and receiving your own inner guidance and your inner wisdom, join me inside the Truer School of Holistic Intuition. It's where I guide you in developing your own ability to connect within, receive the guidance, receive the healing that you need, and live your life guided by your soul. If I could wrap this whole episode up in a nutshell, I would say I reversed the chronic condition, the chronic disease, because I learned how to live led by my soul. My intuition guided me, and now I'm living a much better life. So if that sounds good to you, it's early enrollment right now. So if you sign up now, you get a bonus of the Truer Year, which is a workshop, a multi-section workshop to help you release the past and create the new year, the year ahead, using intention. I'm also going to start offering card readings after every podcast episode. So head on over to the Truer School of Holistic Intuition if you would like to receive messages based on this podcast episode about what does your body need you to know. What messages does your body want you to know for your optimal health and vitality? Okay, I'm going to do that card reading after I record this. And I am so grateful for you to be here. If anything resonated with you, please comment, please share, and rate the show because it really helps. Sending you lots of love. Bye. One more thing. I just want to tell you, I love you, and I'm proud of you for doing the inner work, for showing up, and for choosing a truer life. If this episode resonated with you, if it helped you access a deeper truth within yourself, then please share it with someone you love, because the world needs more of us living our truer lives. This has been a Truer Media production. The Truer podcast is created and produced by me, Katrina Slade. Music by Frequently Asked Music. Wordmark by Annika Samples of Incandescent Creative. Cover photography by Lucinda Richard. Time for the really short legal talk. This podcast is presented solely for educational purposes. I am your soul sister. I am a spiritual guide, but I am not a licensed physician, psychologist, or other qualified medical professional. I hope to see you again.